Hi there. I think I'm going live. Am I live? I think I am. It's saying it is. Every time. Consistent, I guess. At least this part is consistent for me. I think I am. So we will go with it. And I can actually already hear my son doing online homeschooling, or not homeschooling, online remote training um, and learning. And just as a side note, totally not relevant to this at all, but I'm going to still highlight it. When we started all this remote training, I used my family a ton to test breakout rooms, test switching of hosts, do all these things in Zoom and different tools. And my son, after the first day of school, was just like, Mom, I asked the teacher if I could just be host because I know how to do these things. And he was getting super frustrated with what was happening. So, learning in some form or fashion, the kids are going to still do it anyway. So, okay, sorry. My name is Tricia Broderick. I should probably just start over. That's how this week is rolling in general. So it's probably a good topic to be doing for this week. My name is Tricia Broderick. I'm with Agile for All, and I'm coming again live for every 2 weeks for this. And today I'm going to share a little bit about just reacting while remote, especially like right now. It's not just reactions while remote in a normal kind of world, but we're talking about 2020. So it's fair game in many, many things. And I'm finding myself reacting different or well, sometimes different, but also sometimes really exaggerated from what I probably would react, and tips that I've been kind of doing to kind of watch what's happening with that and how I want to respond. So the reality is, before we can even get into the tips, we're human. I know, it's a little secret. And sometimes right now I'm questioning humanity, but the reality is we are human and we do react to things. Neuroscience has told us that how we respond to social threats is similar to how we respond to physical threats. So when people give you statements like "sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me," it's actually not true according to neuroscience. And it does activate the same part of your brain as seeing a bear in the woods. And I remember the first time I heard it, I was at a conference, and she said, yeah, hearing the words "can I give you feedback" triggers the same part as seeing an actual bear in the woods. I'm like, that's crazy. But it's real. And so just because you're remote doesn't mean you won't have triggering effects or want to have those reactions. And in fact, in some ways, I'm finding that I'll have them even more. That it's easier for me to trigger that part of wanting to react and be defensive, or slap back or snap back. And it's happening a little bit more. And part of that is, I'm an extrovert. I get energy from connecting with people. And as much as Zoom somewhat helps, it's not the same. And so I feel very depleted. And as a result, it's easier for me to go to those kind of swings. So, and we're all dealing with a lot of stress. Some of us are dealing with homeschool or remote learning online at home. And I'm always careful about saying homeschool or correcting myself when I do, because I want to respect the people that do truly homeschool, and it is different than what I'm doing with my kids. We're dealing with hurricanes, fire tornadoes. Did you even know that was a thing? I didn't know that was a thing. Didn't have any idea. I've been following my friends in Cedar Rapids and their support of each other after basically an inland hurricane, and I don't know if I know how to say it correctly, Durasho? Again, something I didn't even know existed. So we all have a lot of stress. So not only are we human and naturally react to social threats in a variety of ways, we have all these additional stresses on top of us, which are going to make our reactions a little bit stronger. So here are some of the things that I've been doing, or at least trying to do at times, to react better in this remote setting and what it means. So first one, just think of what medium, right? Just this doesn't change just because we're remote. Email's not always the best place. Slack, asynchronous, is not always the best dynamic, especially when you're feeling frustrated by something, and it will just continue to build. And the problem is I mean, I don't know about you, but I get about 6 emails into a thread of trying to get on the same page, and at this point, I just want to like explode. Yeah, I should have never gotten to 6. It was the wrong medium. And I know that we're tired of Zoom. I know that it's hard because you can't just walk down the hallway. I know that, but pick up a phone even. Pick up, sometimes even the phone in a direct voice can be at least better than email, which we have a tendency to read differently than how somebody might be presenting it. We lose a lot of the other communication dynamics when it's in that written medium form only. So I really have to think about what's my medium, right? Is it good for me to just like send that quick reaction back off an email? Or do I need to pick up a phone or get on a Zoom call real quick and actually address the issue? 2, get an outside view. There are days right now I think I'm crazy. I don't trust my interpretations right now. I don't trust my perceptions often. And so sometimes just getting a third voice or a third party's perspective on something might not change how you want to react, might not change the impact that it had, but it can give you some additional perspective. That's the benefit of diversity, that's the benefit of the wisdom of the crowd. And so sometimes just having, I know my husband and I are doing this now, like we'll talk about like a frustration that we're having, and although I don't know if he always appreciates it when I'm like, well, what about this? and later it does help him move forward, right? But in that moment he's probably a little frustrated with me, and vice versa. But hearing a third person who's not having a trigger or reaction to the thing might be able to help you see it from a different lens and kind of put it back in perspective. Because I know personally I'm like 0 to 10 quickly, and so especially remote. And so having that other voice can kind of go, okay. Also, it just helps when you're talking it out because you realize, okay, what am I really frustrated about? Is it this particular thing? Is it something that was before that? What's really happening? And so I find even just sharing it with the third person helpful in kind of de-escalating sometimes. Sometimes not. Sometimes I can get even more frustrated by it. But it's an option for you. Third thing. Remember what the long-term goal is. It might feel really, really good to fire off that quick, you suck response. But if this is somebody you have to work with for the rest of the year, for next year, if this is somebody that you want to collaborate, those quick, feel-good reactions in the moment end up not feeling so great later, and you end up doing more work. So I always try to remember what's the long-term goal with this relationship, and understanding that that's the bigger picture, not just this one moment. We're gonna have conflict, we're gonna have moments, and I have to keep in perspective what I'm really trying to achieve with that individual, even in a remote setting. 4, have you been vulnerable? I know this is no shock to anybody who knows me, but the reality is me just admitting, when I don't work out in the morning, I'm edgy. Like especially because I'm sitting. I even got one of those tabletop stands to like lift my desk up, but the reality is I still feel stuck in this box. I still feel like, so I can't really move, and then I just feel like I'm doing this rocking thing in the camera. So me sitting nonstop, I'm not getting a lot of energy out. My adrenaline's building in different ways. And when I don't work out in the morning, I'm testier. I'm edgy. I can elevate a lot quicker. And so being honest a little bit, being vulnerable and saying, "Hey, I caught up on the news last night, and I I have lots of emotions, and it's going to cause me to react." And being honest about that, not as an excuse, not as a right for any kind of actions or responses that you are having, but acknowledging kind of the reality that some of us are stressed, not some of us, probably most of us are super stressed, and it's okay to be honest about that, to be open about that, because if I'm hearing somebody else say, "Hey, I'm super frustrated today," and then they send me a snotty email, I can let it go, because I actually realize it really has nothing to do with me. And it's just, in fact, in some ways they feel comfortable enough to do it with me instead of because they know I won't take it the wrong way. And so be vulnerable with it. 5, know what your boundaries are. I got a text from a client last week where, I guess, well, within the last 2 weeks, it's part of what prompted this topic, and she had this just really inappropriate, condescending email from her boss. And she didn't know how to respond. And we talked through it, we were talking through it, and there came a point of, you have to know what your boundaries are with this. There's one thing is, yes, we're all stressed. Yes, we could be vulnerable about that. Yes, we're on edge. I want so badly to socialize and be in a huge crowd of people, right? That's where I draw energy. But the reality is that's not anybody else's fault. And we have to be careful to not expect people to just deal with it. And so we need to know what our boundaries are. And we worked together for her to kind of explore what was, not acceptable, but what was conflict that they could address, and what was unacceptable, and what was a boundary that had been crossed, that needed to be communicated and clearly stated. And in a lot of cases, we need to set those boundaries, and not even in a conflict. I mean, sometimes it's better to do it before you're actually in a conflict, but to say, "Hey, I don't expect to respond. Don't expect me to respond after a certain period of time, even though we're home. And if I don't respond within 30 minutes, I do not want an email that basically is telling me I'm lazy and not working." And what those boundaries are, you need to express them. And you may need to explore them, and they may change. But when people are stressed, they tend to forget other people's boundaries, and so we have to be explicit about it. What am I on? 6, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Don't avoid the small things. Conflict doesn't just go away. And the problem is, if you avoid little things over and over and over again, chances are you're going to blow. And I am super guilty of this one. And it's a strange dynamic, because I don't mind conflict. I don't have a problem having discussions. But I think it's because I'm so willing to kind of go, they're human, they're processing something, they're kind of insulting me, they're making me paranoid, they're hurting my feelings, but I know they don't mean it, and it's a moment and it will pass, right? And it's not that big of a deal, and I can I can deal with them while they're processing this information, and I kind of try to be so empathetic to the other person that it builds and it builds, and then unfortunately I can have a harsh startup, and it's not a good quality of mine. It's not, well, it's not a quality, it's not a good it's not a good moment for me, but I will eventually, there'll be one too many of those little digs that I'll be like, okay, if you think I'm not gonna be good at this, right? Like, and I blow, but the problem is I'm really freaking out about the pattern of the things and not the one thing. But the problem is the one thing is what I'm actually expressing, and so be really careful about letting little things slide to the point that you then blow. And a good recent indicator for me of knowing that this is happening is I'm upset about it, but I'm just not talking to that person. Like, so the reality is my most recent harsh startup I had, I was talking to my husband about it. I knew it was like it was building and things like that, and yet I didn't have the conversation early enough. And so that's something that be careful about, because the problem is once you blow, then you're remote, and it's a lot harder to repair, to make sure everything's okay, because I might not interact with that person now every day. I might not pass them in the hallways and things like that. So really be careful about that dynamic, because it is easier to break faster and harder, especially in this kind of environment of 2020. And then the last one that I want to talk about, and this one's an interesting one for me. What if your perception is actually a projection? And, when we're in a state of uncertainty, when we're trying to figure out and want some comfort, some status quo, some security, we can actually project a lot of things. I took a CR training, organizational systems relationships coaching training, and one of the things they said in there is anytime you're pointing at somebody, which is a weird angle to do on camera, anytime you're pointing at somebody, you're actually pointing 3 fingers back at yourself, and that's not always true, but it did make me actually realize a little bit of sometimes when we judge others or we have a perception, there's something that we're trying to comfort. There's something that we're trying to make okay. And for me, in a little bit of times where if I'm possibly projecting a little bit in terms of my own insecurities or my own frustrations or my own energy depletion, as to what I'm expecting from the other person, especially when we're not really transparent about what those expectations are or what we're doing. So a lot of times I kind of check myself in terms of going, is this a new need for me that I'm now being the victim about? Or should I actually acknowledge this is a new need, acknowledge this is something different? Because you may have been working with somebody for years, but this environment is gonna change how you work together. Like Jake Calabrese and I give the Leading Amazing Teams course nonstop, and we just work together while we're training, and it works. Online, it's been trickier because we have so many natural cues for each other that we don't even think about, and online it's harder. And so there's just an element of thinking about what do I need more, and so I expressed it, right? I was like, ooh, I kind of feel like I'm your admin right for the last hour, and I don't know why. He wasn't saying anything, he wasn't doing anything, there was nothing to judge in that regard. It was me realizing that in this environment I had a different dynamic or a need or an insecurity coming up in some form or fashion, and we have to have those conversations. But I try to make it, when I'm having that, is how do I create from it and not just react to it and be a victim from it, because he didn't have any bearing on that. Like he was doing what he normally does. In fact, he was like kicking, like, oh, I almost swore. Look at that. I caught myself. I feel like I like, if I could see people, I would want an applause right now, like, because like that was hard. Maybe we should do a whole live stream about habits you have at home that you managed to break at work, but now that you're working at home are having issues. But that's for a different day. So yeah, be careful of discovering new needs or new reactions that are less about what the other person is doing or not doing, but more about what you need, and be a creator a little bit more with it. So those are some of my tips that I'm doing. Not perfect at it. Nope. But I'm trying. And I do find, I mean, whether it's in person or online, I have to make a concerted effort, right? But when it's remote and you don't have to face the person, somehow I find my reactions being faster. And so taking that little bit of time to think through some of these has helped me to kind of put things back in perspective, so I can respond in a healthy way and make that conflict actually work for us and not work against us. So let's take some questions. We're on multiple platforms, so we'll see what questions we have out there. And again, I get to do my cheating on my phone part right now, and looking at that. Okay. Okay, so the question is, if you do react poorly, what do you do? Yeah. Honestly, the same things you might do when you're in person. Well, I mean, I guess I maybe not go to lunch right now and or go for a walk, but reach out, right? Don't avoid it. We're gonna have bad days. Everybody's gonna have bad days. Everybody's been having bad days. I saw a meme the other day. Of like, you've now reached Jumanji level 9. Like, it's been a tough year, and then for some people, this isn't just 2020. It's been tough for a while, and so people are tired, and we're gonna have these reactions, and I'm not normalizing them, but on the same note, you shouldn't be surprised by them right now. And yeah, I have a little shame. I'll own my shame when I have one of those moments, but I'm also proud that I'm able to talk about that and to engage with the individual and saying, you know, maybe this is about me and I'm projecting here, but this is kind of what I need, and trust the relationship to be able to have that conversation. And in fact, in some ways, the relationship will get better because we're all gonna screw up, and when we do, and we send kind of the crappy email or the inappropriate email, and we apologize, we learn, we grow, we make amends for it, it actually can better a relationship. The person that emails me, she had a good conversation with her boss. She did set some boundaries, and he ended up being the person that the request that was in the email, he did it himself instead of trying to make her do it, which is what she was targeting, that he had responded to. And so there was a lot of collaboration in how to go forward as a result of being willing to confront it. Will it be perfect? I don't know. Will that one incident help that person to learn? I don't know. Maybe. Probably not. These are habits we have, and we're human. but avoiding the apology, avoiding acknowledging that you had a harsh startup, or that you were curt in your response back, or nasty or inappropriate, doesn't help anybody either. So you want to try and avoid it, but if you don't and you have that moment and you break, who do you want to be after that? You still have that chance to go and figure that out and make amends, and sometimes that's as big of a role model as what you did in the first place, because we're all human. So we're coming up on our time, and I was not great about seeing what's coming up. I believe I have one seat left in the advanced CSM next week. That is, I think we have one seat left on September 9th and 10th for the virtual. Right now it's sold out, but the Leading Amazing Teams course, which is the advanced CSM is all focused on facilitation. The Leading Amazing Teams course is really focused in doubling down on coaching skills. That's the one Jake and I do on September 15th through the 17th. That is currently sold out, but we have somebody that just told us they need to transfer to a later class, so there will be one seat opening up. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, I'm not sure. Depends on when we can get into Eventbrite and make that transfer for that attendee. So there's one seat kind of available in both of those. Other courses available, lots of people doing different things. Agile for All peeps doing CSM, CSPOs, different things along those lines. We will do the next live stream on 9/17, but the time will be a little bit different because we are teaching that day. I'll be teaching the Leading Amazing Teams, so I'll probably do it over lunch, and I'll actually see if I can get one of the attendees to do it with me, so that maybe we can have a dual Zoom kind of Facebook Live, something. I don't know how to do that, but hopefully Ashton will help me figure it out. And bring somebody maybe from the class. If not, I'll try and rope Jake into doing this with me. Okay, so the timing might probably be around the lunch hour for Mountain Time Zone for the next live, just because I've got class. I guess we could just run live during the class too, but that's a different thing. So that's what's coming up. I don't have a topic yet, so inspire me, send me something, and I'll rant about it. I'll give tips about it, or I'll at least try. But in the meantime, be safe. So we'll see you next time.